Atoms versus ions. So what's the difference between these two? Well, let's get into this video on looking at the differences between those things. And of course, as usual, you're taking notes, you're annotating, you're using color, you're drawing diagrams with pencil, good. And any questions that you have, you're writing in the side column there so you can check out later with yourself, more research, or your teacher. So atom versus ion, right? Fundamentally, it's pretty straightforward. An atom is neutral. An atom has the same number of protons as it has the number of neutrons. So if we have a look here, or electrons I should say, if we have a look at this diagram, we can see I've got 11 in positive protons in the middle. Remember, protons and neutrons are in the middle of the nucleus, and since protons have a positive charge, if you have 11 of them, then you're going to have a charge of 11 plus. Now if we count the number of electrons, 1, 2 in the first shell, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the second shell, and then 11 in the third shell. Now these shells and stuff we'll learn about later when we talk about how to draw them, but there's 11 protons which have a positive charge, right? There's 11 electrons which have a negative charge, and so therefore they cancel each other out. So overall, it has an overall charge of 0, and so that is an atom. So an atom, both the protons and the electrons cancelling each other out. There's no charge, and so we can see here, sodium is the element I'm talking about with atomic number 11. And here's another diagram of a neutral sodium atom. Okay, all the electrons, right? The number of electrons are the same number of protons in the nucleus, and so we have a neutral atom. Okay, so if you get a question that says, chlorine, right? How many electrons does an atom of chlorine have? Easy. You go, okay, well I know that for an atom, the number of protons has to equal the number of electrons. So let's look at the periodic table and see what our atomic number is, the number of protons. And then when you do that, you zoom it in, and you can see that chlorine is number 17. And you go, okay, chlorine's got 17 protons, so therefore since it's an atom, it therefore has to have 17 electrons, and there's your answer. Okay, 17 electrons. All right, let's check out on the next slide, which we talk about the difference between an atom and an ion. Well, we've already said that an atom is neutral. Well, an ion is just an atom that is charged. Okay, so if we start off here with a neutral sodium atom, 11 protons and 11 electrons, and see this electron on the outside, let's get rid of it. So if we get rid of this electron, there it is there, then that means it's gone, it's no longer in the outside shell there. And so now instead of having our 11 electrons, now we have 10. We've still got the same number of protons. We can't change the number of protons. Unless you have a particle accelerator, you can't change them. So that stays as 11. But we can easily lose electrons or gain electrons, right? We can change the number of electrons easily, right? We can do that just by rubbing things together. You're changing the number of electrons, and that's the whole idea behind static electricity. You're making a charge. So in this instance, we're getting rid of this outside electron. It's no longer there. So that means we have 10 electrons. If we have now 10 electrons, then that's going to cancel with 10 protons. We're going to have 1 proton left over, so therefore the charge is positive 1. So we've made an ion now. So an ion is just a charged atom, okay? And that's what you've got to remember there. And so I've got now a sodium ion. I've made it. Now here is something to remember, that metals tend to lose electrons to form positive ions, and we'll learn why later, but that's why sodium has got a positive ion here. Sodium can't get an electron and become negative. It's not really energetically favored. Metals want to lose electrons to form positive ions. So that's it there. Let's have one little practice here. Okay, so if I have an atom, at the moment it says it's got 8 positives, and let's have a look. Has it got 8 electrons? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, it does. So the atoms, I should say the electrons and the protons equal each other. So we have neutral charge. What element is it? Well, it's got 8 protons. So therefore, let's check out what is number 8 on the periodic table. and that's from its atomic number. So if I have a look here, I can see that oxygen is number 8 and atomic number 8. Now if I want to make an ion here, well, I said previously in the last video that metals like to lose electrons. Well, non-metals like to gain them, right? They like to gain them, and we'll work out why later. But here, what is energetically favorable is what's going to happen is 2 more electrons are going to join onto there to form an ion, and that gives oxygen, it's really stable now because it has 8 electrons in the outer shell. That's something you want to remember, is it's stable if the first shell has 2 electrons, then the second shell has 8 electrons, okay? And so here's oxygen here. It wants to gain 2 electrons, and then it's going to be nice and stable, okay? It's going to be similar to neon. And so we're going to find out why that is later on, but just something to remember now. If it's got 2 in the first shell, it's stable. If it's got 8 in the outside second shell, it's stable. So therefore, if I was to do this, I have 8 plus, and then I have 2 electrons from my second shell, and then this shell here has 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that means I have 8 protons, but then I have how many electrons now? Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have 10 negatives, which means that's going to give me an overall charge of -2. So oxygen now has a charge of -2, and we write it like that. An O with a 2 in the superscript positions. This is called a superscript. Okay, so that's how you do it for that one. Alright, hopefully that makes sense about the difference between an atom and an ion. I did go into a little bit extra there about how to draw them, but of course make sure we're going to do videos on why they want to get 8, why they don't want to be stable, and how we can draw them. This was just an illustration that 1, atoms are neutral and ions are charged, and 2, metals lose electrons to form ions, and 3, non-metals will tend to gain electrons to form negative ions. Okay, that's it. I'll see you in another video. Here's a quote which I particularly like. This one's from Richard Branson. It says, "You don't learn to walk by following rules, you learn by doing and falling over. And by doing and falling over, you make mistakes. You put things into place to make sure you don't fall over again." Think about the first time you rode your bike. You kept changing things all the time. You didn't read a rule book once and then go out and then go over a jump. You practiced and practiced and practiced, fell over, learnt not to turn so quickly. Well, that's what we've got to do. So how did you go with the material that you just learnt? Could you explain that material to another person? Could you draw diagrams to explain it? With your notes that you have down, remember, are they active? Are they detailed? Are they highlighted? Do you have questions in those notes to make yourself really think about them from multiple perspectives? Because that's what you need to do when you learn this material. Hope it all makes sense to you, but we've got to, of course, challenge our brain cells to constantly remind it. Remember in the study videos, I said that when you learn something, it's like making a track through your brain, and you've got to keep revising it until that track is a clear track that will not erase or fade away, and you will remember it. Okay, so that's what we're after. And of course, you need to have your plan to study. Do you make flashcards? Do you study with a study person, a friend? Do you just talk to your parents to tell them what you've learned? That's a way of revising the material. Even though they may not know it, it's revising. So you're learning it from multiple perspectives. So constantly challenge yourself. Hope you understood the information. You've got all these techniques down that we've talked about, and you've watched study videos, and you're feeling better about your confidence in this subject. See you next video.